Okay, this is take two. Hello world. We're back after some technical difficulties. And yeah, Jake, what do you have to say to the people?
Good to be chatting with you again. Actually, it's the third take. I think you forgot, but
It is the third take. I stand corrected. It is the third take. And we're experimenting with the name. Jake put together an awesome logo, so kudos to him. Do you want to tell the worldwide audience what our name is, at least for right now? We have all the rights to change it if we choose so.
for sure. So the working name is Breaking Bagels. Honestly, because I thought it was the funniest one, and I feel like we should always go after excitement and funny and witty, and it feels very Jewish as well. The whole bagel thing. But yeah, what do you think about it?
I like it. I thought there was something like breaking bread. I was worried that was like a Christian thing, but then I asked ChatGPT at least, which is what I do when I have most questions nowadays. It didn't say it was specifically a Christian thing, so I was like, you know what? Breaking bagel sounds pretty funny. I think a lot of people unfortunately associate Judaism like only with bagels. At least like a lot of my upbringing was thinking about like bagels and lox type of Judaism. Of course, there's so much more in depth that we cover on this podcast, but I think it definitely has that association with people. And yeah, it's the working name for now. We'll see if we're changing it, but for now it sounds great. I was telling Jake right before this that I took inspiration from him, and I have like it's not a standing desk, but it's like a little attachment that I put on top of my desk, and like I could lift it. And I was like, you know what? Might as well stand for the conversation. I like it more than just sitting down. I'm curious, when did you invest in a standing desk, and has it changed your life? Is it life changing like people say it is?
No, hasn't been life changing. But I love it, because I feel like otherwise I'm just crouching all
Mhm.
day over the desk. And it's funny, I wasn't even cognizant of this until I was working alongside a coworker. Coworker comes over and she's like, "You're like bending way too far down." Like she like moves me up and like my back is straight. I'm like this is how you should be sitting. And honestly, like when if you sit up straight or you're standing up straight, like you're breathing better, you're feeling better.
100%.
So, I don't know. It hasn't been life changing, but it's been nice though. Do
Yeah,
you? I feel like a lot of people get the standing desk, but it just stays in the down position.
exactly. Yeah, honestly, I'm sitting way more than I am using the standing feature, but I'm pretty active like throughout the day. So by the time I sit down to work, usually I've hit like pretty close to 10,000 steps. I've hit a workout, so I feel like sitting isn't the end of the world after I'm pretty exhausted. But yeah, to each their own, I guess.
When you're just chatting like this, it's great. If you
It
have
is
to like
great.
take a lot of notes, it could be a little harder.
What a lot of people at my job have at Beehive, they're taking it a step further where they actually have a walking pad under their desk. So like they'll be in a meeting like this the whole time, and like they're just getting their steps in, and pretty cool. I mean, it is pretty cool. You like see people like just in all hands and their heads are bobbing up and down because they're walking. So I think that's the next level.
For me, my kids keep me in shape. Like in the morning, I'm running around, going a hike, and then I'm in the afternoon, running around to get them. And I have little kids now, so they keep me in shape.
Speaking of little kids and keeping you in shape and running around, I saw, not that I'm a stalker, but I watch, I'm like off of a lot of social media, so I do watch, WhatsApp stories from time to time. Looked like you were chasing your little kids on Purim. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about, we could do a little Purim recap for everyone watching. I don't know when we're going to release this, but it is Monday. I guess it's Tet Zion. Um, I'm not exactly sure. Yesterday was the day after Shushan Purim, which is Tesvav. But we celebrated Shushan Purim yesterday, at least the Suda part in Jerusalem where I was. But Jake celebrated on regular Purim Yud Daled, which was on Thursday night, Friday. So how we do a little Purim recap?
Yeah, absolutely. So totally different. I've actually never done the Jerusalem one where it's split over 3 days,
Hmm.
but having Purim go into Shabbos is just a different type of Purim because one of the customs is you drink a little more than usual. And obviously that affects everything, right? It
Hmm.
affects your day, the joy, how you're feeling. But then going into Shabbos, where you're going to be, praying as a community and having another meal, so it really changes the whole feel of it. But the video that you were referencing on my WhatsApp status was like this year, my kids wanted to be butterflies. My wife also
Mm.
wanted to be butterflies. So she's like, that makes you the butterfly catcher. So she ordered some stuff from AliExpress, the hat and everything. And I was like to my wife, the only problem with this costume is, I'm going to like the hat and I'm going to wear the hat outside of Purim. It's like one of those big hiking hats. It's
Oh,
actually
nice.
super useful. And like one of the amazing things in Israel is all the hikes
Uh-huh.
around the entire country. So I actually did go on a hike yesterday and
Nice.
wore it, and it was a blast. So yeah, the kids had a lot of fun. I was chasing after them. I was still able to catch them, as I think you saw in the video.
I saw.
So that means we're both keeping in shape.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. How about you? Like,
Very
what was the
nice.
3 day like?
What was if you had one highlight of Perm, what would that highlight be? And then they'll tell you about my Perm.
Man, honestly, I just loved listening to the Megillah. Like,
Mm.
it was amazing. Definitely, I had to prepare for it to really understand the story that was being told, and it really depends a lot on the person who's reading the Megillah. But for us, we fasted the entire day,
Uh-huh.
and then you listen to the Megillah at night. And so it's just an amazing experience, right? You go without food,
Hmm.
and you feel a lot different after you fasted all day, and then you're just sitting there listening to it. And a lot of people forget that the story, like you read it in a half hour, but
Yeah.
it was a story that took place over 10 years.
Crazy.
And so when you think about it from that perspective, it's completely different.
Hmm.
So that was really the highlight for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's always interesting in my shul also, because a lot of people are fasting, my wife and I included, you get to the Megillah, there's a certain like group of people, and I understand that they're like, let's get through this as quickly as possible, right? We are hungry, we haven't eaten and drink, or drinking anything in hours. But I think the other group of people, it's like once you break it, for me at least, fasting, and we fast, a variety of times around the year. Once you get to a certain point, like that mid-afternoon, I'm good to just power through. So I was enjoying, and I wish it was a little bit slower. But my Purim was pretty crazy because I I feel like the whole point of Purim, and I feel like it was so perfect for me this year, is that like the whole idea of Purim is like it's hilarious how we as human beings think we're in control and run the show. When really, like, obviously God creates, decides, manages everything. And my wife and I, or my wife really wanted to go to Modiin. I really wanted to as well. I have amazing in-laws. If they're listening to this podcast, you guys are the best. Rafi and Beth, shout out. And so we're like, let's go to Modiin for Shabbat. We'll be in Jerusalem on Thursday. Go to Modiin on Friday. Come back Friday. Come back Motzei Shabbat. Spend Shabbat in Jerusalem. Spend Shabbat in Modiin. Come back Motzei Shabbat, and we'll do the Suda, everything on Motzei Shabbat on Sunday in Jerusalem. So we were all packed, ready to go. I called one of my friends who's a huge Talmud Chacham, and we were just chatting, wishing him a good Shabbos. And I told him we're going to Modi'in for Shabbat, and he's like, "Well, then you have to do the Suda like today, and you have to do like everything today, because if you sleep in Modi'in for Shabbat, you are not going to be technically in Jerusalem for Shushan Purim, and you're chayev, and you must do all of the mitzvot in Modi'in." So thank God we already heard Megillah with the rest of the world. We already did Matanot Le'vionim here in Jerusalem. So we took our Mishloach Manot, we just threw them with us on the bus, packed it in our Shabbos bags, gave them to people in Modi'in, and then about an hour before Shabbos, we started our Suda, and it was amazing. We started a Suda, just my wife and I, at my in-laws' house. I was got I don't think Adelo Yada in the classic sense, but I was definitely buzzed. Went with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law to shul. They actually asked me to be the chazan. I don't think they knew that I had a few glasses of wine, but Baruch Hashem, thank God I made it through. I think it was enjoyable. I think it might have even been a little bit better if I'm being fully honest. When I had that little buzz, came back, continued the Suda, made Kiddush, and yeah, it was a great time. So, and then we did it all again yesterday, which was incredible. And I think this is maybe a side point, but one of the things that's changed a lot since I've been married, which has now been coming up on 6 months, and I think it's just a sign of maturity in general, is I guess having less FOMO and being able to go like deeper into certain situations that I'm in. Like in Jerusalem, for instance, everywhere there's something amazing going on. You know, there's this huge rabbi here, there's this crazy party here, there's a once in a lifetime experience here. But I think like the real point of Purim is just to be present wherever you are. So just going to one Suda, whatever it is, diving deep with good friends, family, good food, good wine. To me, that was really, really the highlight.
That's amazing. I don't even know which thread to pull on. We can go down the whole presence thing,
Yeah,
uh, which is a really interesting thing. You mentioned Matanot Le'vionim
yeah,
and Mishloach Manot. Can you tell people a little bit more about that who aren't familiar with it?
for sure. I'll pick one, you pick the other. I could talk about Matanot Le'vionim if you want. You could talk about Mishloach
Take one,
Manot.
whatever you're feeling.
So Matanot Le'vionim, first off, I mean, there's this whole concept before we get into specifically Matanot Le'vionim, where charity, tzedakah, is very important in Judaism. And the real strong custom is to give at least 1/10 of whatever you make for tzedakah. And some people do a lot more. There's also some people that give away a fifth. But basically, it's seen the more the merrier that you're able to give to people who are less fortunate. And to me, this has been something like throughout my career that I've tried to really work on, especially as I've grown in my Judaism. Actually, my checking accounts, I named it like "Thank you Hashem" checking account. So like I just have a reminder that everything that I earn, it's all coming from Hashem.
That's my
And
Wi-Fi,
that's your Wi-Fi. I love it. My Wi-Fi. I shouldn't say my Wi-Fi password, but let's just say
not the password.
it is something that is similar to that. If you're here and want to guess, but and as soon as I make some money from my job or whatever it is, a certain portion I have already going to a separate account for tzedakah. So I'm sure we could speak about that in a later episode. But Matanot Le'vionim is basically around a lot of holidays, also for Pesach and other things. You're supposed to give some money to the people who are less fortunate so they could also afford a meal and afford to celebrate the holiday as well. So Purim, it's a very similar concept where everyone's joyous and everyone's rejoicing, and also the people who are less fortunate should be able to, afford to have a nice meal. And it's and that's why we have Matanot Le'vionim. So they have basically money. My wife just came home. Hi Tamar, I'm recording a podcast. It's okay. Shalom Bayit, that comes number one, by the way. Even if you're recording a podcast and your wife comes home, you need to
Absolutely.
pause and take some time. We're not going to edit this out even to teach this lesson. But basically, Matanot Le'vionim on Purim, when everyone's rejoicing and having a holiday and a festive feast, you should take money. It should be at least a meal, so at least maybe 40, 50 shekels worth. A lot of people go much higher, but at least enough for a shawarma laffa, whatever, for the poor. So very important mitzvah. You want to tell us a little bit about Mishloach Manot, everyone's favorite mitzvah, it seems like on Purim, besides
Love
getting
it.
drunk.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. So when you mentioned, giving a 10% or 20% of all the money you make, the Matanot Le'vionim is on top of that. This is just like around the
Exactly.
holiday times, you give more. And I was thinking about this. I love it. It's like you can't celebrate if everyone can't celebrate.
I
It's like
love it.
everyone needs to do it. And I think that's the key idea. It's also related to Mishloach Manot.
Hmm.
So Mishloach Manot are basically little food packages that you give to all your friends. It's actually more important to give to people you don't know so
Hmm.
well, because everyone knows who their friends are. You're kind of expecting to give these food packages to each other. But I love it because it gave me an opportunity to just reach out to other people. So we made, I think, around 50 or so. And then we had extra that we could make,
Wow.
like extra bags and all those things. And for me, I love just giving out food because everyone loves to receive it. Giving it to kids. I'm giving it to my kids to give to people, and it was really just a blast. And I think the inner aspect of that is becoming a giver in every sense
Hmm.
of the word. Because I think when I saw it through the eyes of my kids, they were really excited to receive. Right? Like a
Uh-huh.
lot of times, if you give someone one of these little food packages, they made a lot and they'll give to you, and that's what they were super excited about.
Uh-huh.
But that's why I kind of gave more of the packages to them to give. And for me to internalize, like, it's really about the giving. It doesn't have to do
Hmm.
with if you receive a food package. back. And I think that dovetails a lot into business. Like I've seen
Yeah.
it in my career as well. I try not to think about what I'm going to get, what I'm going to pay or whatever. It's
Mhm.
just someone reaches out for help or an introduction or whatever. Just give, give, give. Have you
Yeah.
kind of seen that in your career as well?
100%. I mean, there's so many examples that are just coming to mind right away. I think one of them that I'll mention is for those that don't know, I started a local newsletter here. It's called the JLM Scoop. It's in Jerusalem, telling people the best events and activities and things to do in Jerusalem. And for a while, I was having a hard time getting a sponsor, even though like we were growing very nicely and had really good engagement. And I spoke to a friend of mine who has a very successful local newsletter, and he said start giving away sponsorships for free, like completely
Mm.
for free. And to me that like seems so backwards. I'm like, what do you mean? It's I'm trying to charge for them, and I think I have a lot of value. It's only fair, it's only right that they should pay. But it actually was really beneficial because two things happened when I started giving sponsorships for free. The first thing that happened is I was able to collect a lot of case studies, which like anyone who has a business, runs a business knows how important it is. For instance, I did some free sponsorships for my personal trainer in the gym. I was able to show we got him about 15, 16 leads. I think maybe three of those converted. This is how much money, added up monthly for him. And so like to show that to like a real estate agent going for a sponsorship, hey, this is what we did last month for someone else. That was really helpful. And the second thing is I think it showed people like, okay, like there is a sponsor of this newsletter. They are featuring businesses. They are open for sponsorship. So yeah, thank God we actually just closed our first, it's like a trial sponsorship, but it's a paid sponsorship with a real estate agent. And so far I think it's going pretty well. We just did the past 2 weeks. We ran them. We have 2 more weeks. Hopefully can get them some really good results. So yeah, give things for free, and that's when the magic happens.
It's counterintuitive, right?
It is. It's
But
it's
the
very
thing is,
counterintuitive.
internally, you actually can't expect anything in return because
Yeah,
the whole thing will not work.
100%, a
You just
hundred
have to
percent.
give and so like I've done that as well. Like a lot of people don't like to work for free at all. But
Yeah,
definitely in my earlier part of my career, if I was like interviewing for a job that I really wanted or whatever,
yeah,
or like wanted to reach out to a business to see if they would have, an opportunity for me to work there, I would sometimes come up with some really good ideas for their business based on what I saw on their website
yeah.
or app store reviews or whatever, and just like give value. Give
Uh-huh.
value, have no expectations in return. And a lot of times that opened doors for me.
Yeah. I'm interested with. I know this agency that you started off, brand new agency. How do you balance like giving things away for free, doing free work with paid work? I'm sure people know that like you do design, you do all these things. I'm sure you have tons of people reaching out like, hey, what do you think of this? Or any chance you could spin up a design for that? Like, how does it? It's like asking a lawyer for legal advice. It always gets a little iffy. Where the line is crossed, where they should start paying you for your time and for your energy.
Great question. So what I give away is just quick calls.
Yeah.
So if we do a 20-minute call, I can give a lot of value in that. And sometimes we both discover like, you don't need me, you need someone else, or maybe you're not really clear on what you're building. So I'll do those calls with them.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of like pushing pixels and doing strategy or whatever, that's all
Yeah.
paid. What I do a lot of times is just work by hour. And I
Uh-huh.
actually use the iPhone timer and time it down to the minute. So
Yeah.
like I don't round up, and I think that's also part of like being a Jew in the workplace is I don't want to charge people for something that, I'm not going to round up the hour if they didn't actually get that work for me.
Yeah.
If I'm working on that basis, sometimes it's on a project basis.
Yeah.
But that's really what I give away is just like, hey, book my time. But when it comes to actually working together and giving them deliverables, then that's all paid work.
Yeah. I want to double click on that for a second because I remember you mentioned that to me on our first call before it was our first time meeting before it was recorded, and I remember thinking that's amazing. Like I would guess the amount of people that work on an hourly basis that are timing everything to the second using like a stopwatch or an iPhone, it is under 1%. I would assume the vast majority of people are rounding probably pretty generously in their favor. And I first off, that is very, commendable, for you, and definitely the type of thing that I would love, if I hired an hourly worker. When did that start? And do you like is that something you let people know sort of from the beginning? Is there some like Jewish concept tied within that, or is that just like a moral thing that you feel? I'm like curious the origins and the impact and maybe effect it's had on your business as well.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I think you hit on a bunch of key points. So for me, this really started when I started doing hourly work,
Hmm.
and that was just a few months ago. But it definitely came from the Torah, which talks about having proper weights and measures, right? So if you're
Hmm.
selling things, let's say someone wants to buy a kilo of poppy seeds, so you shouldn't have a weight that weighs, more than a kilo, so
Uh-huh.
that it looks like they're getting less or whatever. There's a whole thing about not even having these weights in your house that are
Uh-huh.
not properly measured, even if you're not going to use them. So
Hmm.
the Torah is basically saying stay far away. Don't even like have things that are going to improperly measure things when you're doing business. And so for me, like, even I know your wife just walked in a little bit. If my wife walked in, I'm pausing on the iPhone. If I'm like gonna be on Spotify for 2 minutes,
Yeah.
I'm pausing. So really it's down to the second, and then I round down a little bit just to
Uh-huh.
make sure that like it's definitely, this is all the work I did. They can count it minute by minute. And I definitely tell them that in the beginning. And they appreciate that. All of my clients that I've worked with have, worked with me further.
Uh-huh.
So
That's
yeah, I
awesome.
think.
One of the things I'm curious about, this is like shifting a little conversations and gears a little bit, and not something we wrote down in sort of the notes for this call, but I speak to lots of people every day, both Olim, Jewish, non-Jewish, and a lot of them are curious sort of the founder or entrepreneur route versus the employee route. And I feel like it's interesting. I could speak a little bit to both because of course I have my full-time job at Beehive as an employee, which I love, but I also have to, do a few things on the side as well. And definitely, try to do the best of my time balancing and making time for everything. But you're also someone, it sounds like, who, now you're more out on your own, starting your agency. In the past, have worked more salary employee jobs. I'm curious, like, what was the decision like to go out off on your own? What are the big differences? Maybe we could just have a candid conversation of how that looks and how that looks maybe in Israel versus in America as well.
Yeah, great question. So it started off with, people approaching me. If as you build your network over time, people ask for little things, whether it's a pitch deck or a website or a redesign, just advice. And so for me, I was like, hey, even if I have a full-time job or I'm applying for other full-time jobs, might as well just start this thing and, run some business through that, because you can
Uh-huh.
always do some more stuff before work, after work, that sort of thing. And it's been a great way for people to for me to meet people, really.
Hmm.
So that's really, I just looked at what would be most fun for me to do. I love doing design, love meeting new people, and that's how that was born. I don't have this 10-year vision for it. It happens to be just, I looked at what I love doing, I was able to package it up, and people are able to reach out, and I don't have a lot of planning. I actually
Uh-huh.
focus a lot more on what I love to do, what are the habits, and I know like I'll eventually get to whatever vision or goal through that. So I don't have a 10-year plan with it. Um, but yeah, I don't have like a lot of thought process around that. Does that
Yeah.
seem counterintuitive to you?
No, it doesn't. It's interesting because I think there are really two ways to go about building a business, especially on your own. And one approach is more, I guess it's like, I wouldn't call it necessarily financially driven, but like you have, I mean, it is financially driven. Maybe I'll just call it that, where like you have a certain goal in mind. I want to, make six figures doing consulting work, whatever it is. And then based off of that vision that you have, like that revenue target or profit target, you back into, the clients you want to work with, how you want to work with them, how you want to structure your rates and packages and everything like that. The downside of going with that approach is you might when you find yourself in something that you're not particularly passionate about. Like, for instance, I think that someone right now could spin up an agency where they help people doing, AI automations using like Make and Zapier and be making a killing off of that because I've used them myself and I see how amazing it is. I know I would be bored of that in like a second, and I think that is like a little too technical for me and not so fun, but like that would be taking that approach. versus the other approach is when what you're talking about is, finding something that you love doing that you probably know more about than 99% of people, monetizing that. And like the dream world, and I think really the most successful businesses, and for sure startups are a perfect combination of those two. It's really, what are you amazing at and really good at, and people will pay you for, married to what is a market that is really growing or what is an area that's really trending, right? And that's, I think, where people see the most success.
Yeah, yeah, awesome point. I love the second approach, as you can tell. Um, because for me, it depends on how you define wealth. For
Yeah,
me, wealth is freedom. Like I can wake up and I can go on a hike and I can hang out with my kids and I can be present.
yeah,
That goes to that first conversation about presence, which is like
for
maybe a
sure.
whole other podcast episode, but that's wealth to me. And then, it's freedom, it's being able to,
Mm,
engage in different hobbies and meet people. And I find like just in my career, the money has followed that versus if you're running after the money, it doesn't always follow, or you could be doing something or you just feel like you're a slave in. And I think
yeah.
that relates to how you kicked off the conversation with giving 10, 20% per month, Matanot Le'vionim, because really what you're saying is this money has no power over me. Like
Mm,
I'm not actually 10% poor from giving money.
mm,
It always comes back and more. You have to give with no expectation, but really what you're getting is this feeling that money doesn't control you.
uh.
So I don't know. Have you ever thought about it from that perspective before?
100%. At that point really resonates with me because I think when people see, individuals who are super wealthy or successful or whatever, like I don't think most people are really jealous of Elon Musk or like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, I don't know the exact day to day of these people, but I imagine people like Elon are crazy busy. I mean, you just see his schedules, like he's all over the place managing four companies, not like involved in the government, which we're definitely not going to go there. But like, I'm for sure not jealous of that at all. Like, to me, the type of lifestyle, like you mentioned, that's very appealing is you have the financial freedom to do what you want when you want. And I think that's what most people are after. It's actually interesting. It's an interesting point. I've been posting a little bit more like on Twitter, definitely on LinkedIn, and one of the people who ended up like commenting on one of my tweets, his name's Andrew Wilkinson. He's a
Oh yeah, I've known
billionaire.
about him for over 10 years.
Wow, yeah, you're
When
in the
when he was
design
at Meta
world.
Lab, he was like a big inspiration for me. He worked on one of my dad's businesses, so
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. She's exactly. You're in the design world. I forgot. Look, Dribble and everything. Like you must know Andrew. So he commented on one of my tweets. It was about local newsletters, and I was talking about them,
Sweet.
and he's done a lot of stuff with local newsletters. And we actually did like a little emailing back and forth. And at the I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, you could probably do the background better than I can, but he's a very wealthy individual, like billionaire type of individual. And he wrote a book. I think it's called Never Enough. And basically, his premise in the book is that the vast majority of people would much prefer to be multimillionaires than they would prefer to be billionaires. And he was saying that like the vast majority of people would be much happier with $25 million. I know that that also is a lot of money, right? It's not like we're talking about, chump change here. But it was interesting to see what he was talking about. He speaks very openly about how he struggles with depression. He has all of this money, he has people coming to him for favors. He doesn't know, who to, his relationships are changing. All right. So I think like it is very interesting. And sometimes that wealth that you have can really like bind you up and make you the opposite of what you want to be, which is the opposite of freedom. It can really make you a slave to like to other people, a slave to all the companies that you started that now you work for. I know this probably sounds like the equivalent, like the exact definition of first world problems. We're talking about, billionaires being sad. But it was an interesting point and an interesting sort of back and forth I had with Andrew.
No, it's so true. Like money doesn't make you more happy. I think his point about 25 million was, hey, I want to get all my basic needs met and I want to have a
Yeah,
house and I want to have this freedom, but I think a lot of people don't realize how big of a challenge wealth is. Again, I'm not
yeah,
saying that from a perspective of being a billionaire, but I feel wealthy, right? Because I have my health, I have my family, I have an income. I got to live where I want to live. And I think that's, this is also a podcast about Israel. In Israel, people like really know how to live. And a lot of that, they're not really, at least what I've seen, not as driven by wealth and trying to reach certain
Yeah.
heights in that sense. Like even just the modern Orthodox lifestyle, which is maybe a long discussion, maybe for another podcast as well. But in some of the American, Jewish communities, you have to be earning three, four, $500,000 to feel like you're paying for everything,
Crazy.
and that's a lot. That's a lot of money for people. Most people don't make that. But here, I find it's not the case. Like people are okay with more chilled weddings, and simchas, and the school is mostly paid for. So there's a lot more freedom to engage in these side projects or build new things. So
100%.
have you like thought about that at
Yeah.
all?
First off, I have an amazing story. I don't want to
Yeah, tell me.
I know I don't want to ruin the flow we have right now, but remind me at the end, and bring up the story. Also, a little hook to keep everyone listening. But one thing that I wanted to ask you about, I wanted to go back on the freedom point. I didn't want to lose that there. So you said part of
Hmm.
the reason you wanted to start your own agency or whatever was to have that freedom. I'm curious, like, do you what is a day in the life of Jake look like today? Made Aliyah around 6 months ago, living in Beit Shemesh. I don't know how much you want to share, how comfortable you are sharing. We can edit this out, but I'm very curious, what a day in the life looks like for you.
Good question. So day in the life. I wake up at 2:57 a.m. You didn't know that. I don't
Is
think
that a
most people know
joke?
that. No, no, no. But I go to sleep early. So
2:57 a.m.?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't always like that. It
Now
wasn't
I'm
always
very
like
happy
that.
I asked this question. It sounds like the beginning of like a
This wasn't
crazy
planned,
Instagram
guys.
reel.
Seriously.
2:57 a.m. Okay, 3 minutes before 3 a.m. Is there a reason why it's 2:57 Dafka and not 3 a.m. or like
Yeah, because I
5?
was able to get to 3 a.m. and so I pushed it to 2:57. So I'm continually trying to wake up
Wow.
earlier and earlier. A lot of that for me was because a couple years ago I heard about certain businessmen or whatever would wake up at 3:30 a.m. and like start working on their business, right? Like doing a meditation about money,
Yeah.
and I was like, if I if there's someone who's so driven for money and growing their business and all that, like I have to do that for God, right? I gotta
Yeah.
wake up early, and in the morning, that's like the main time before the kids are waking up and everything where I'm learning. So I kind of learn Torah in the morning, and then I daven, I pray the first time of the day at Shacharit, at the sunrise. So kind of do that. That way I can like do my learning and kind of set the day up properly before I'm running around with the kids and trying to be present there. Because
What,
again, going back, sorry, go ahead. What were you
no,
gonna say?
I was saying I'm that's not a good enough answer for me. I want the specifics. You wake up 2:57. What time are you sitting down with the Sefer? What is it? What are you learning? And then I guess you go somewhere for Nate's or whatever if there's a Nate's minion by you. Give me the time by time breakdown. I'm fascinated by this.
Yes. So wake up, first wash my hands. We have we say Nitilat Yadayim in the morning. Um, and then I go and I say brachot. So I
Hmm.
do all the morning prayers. You thank God for waking up in the morning, for returning your soul to you, for being able to see, for being able to move your limbs. Like, and they mean very basic things, but they also mean a lot deeper things according to Kabbalah and Chassidut. But it means a lot of things. You basically go through a gratitude practice,
Hmm.
and then I do Tikkun Chatzot. So I
Wow.
kind of reflect on that we don't have the third Beis Hamikdash, and I hope we will have the third Beis Hamikdash soon. But I kind of go through that practice, and then I start learning until sunrise, and it really
What are you
changes.
learning until sunrise?
What am I learning till sunrise? So I'm going through all different things. It kind of depends on what my mood is, but I'm usually grabbing anywhere between like 3 and 8 books. So that's either I try to have Gemara every day, try to have Halacha every day, try to do like now in this time we're coming up on Pesach, so I'm trying to do Pesach things every day. Chassidut, my main like Chassidut that I kind of learn and practice is Breslov. So it's really all over the place. Depends on how I'm feeling.
First off, I didn't know that I my co-host was a massive tzaddik that does tikkun chatzot and wakes up at before 3 a.m. But I guess now I do. Um, I wow, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of questions there. Um, the one thing that I don't want to forget to touch up on, but not right now. Maybe later in the day. But if you're abreast of Chassid, when's the time for Hitbo to do it? Which is you're talking to Hashem and talking to God like you would with a great with your best friend. One thing I'm just curious of. I'm curious like the rest of your day. It's probably almost your bedtime. It's almost 3 p.m. here, so I'm curious the rest of your day. But one other thing that I'm curious about, maybe we don't cover right now. It's like the journey of moving your bedtime earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'm someone who I've tried waking up earlier and earlier and going to sleep earlier and earlier, but like that probably requires an insane amount of discipline and what that journey's been like over time and what recommendations you'd have to someone listening to this where they're like, you know what, I need to get up earlier as well. And I don't have kids yet, but God willing, when my wife and I have kids, I realize from a lot of people that like those early hours in the morning before the kids are awake
The
are
best.
are like when you could get everything done.
It's quiet, the air is clear and fresh. I was always an early riser. Like naturally, I would wake up at 5:30, something
Uh-huh.
like that,
Wow.
5, anywhere there. So I was always a morning person. So some people might not have that. Like everyone's different. You got to see what works for you. My method might not work for anyone else, but really, I just kept just moving it little by little, earlier and earlier, and trying to kind of jump when I could. Sometimes I would try to push it. I would know when I'm pushing it too far,
Uh-huh.
and when I could push it more. I just kind of kept hitting plateaus, and that's why when I moved it up to 3, and you asked why am I at 2:57, because I just moved it 3 minutes earlier. I'm like I want to wake up in the twos, right?
Uh-huh.
And eventually it'll get earlier and earlier. But I think part of it is whenever you sleep before 12 a.m., those seem to be better, like deeper hours. That's what I read. I don't know if it's true.
Uh-huh.
Anecdotally, it works for me. So
Uh-huh.
whatever hours you sleep before 12 a.m., they're kind of like better hours. So it's not like a number thing where, oh, 6 hours is 6 hours.
Uh-huh.
If you get an hour of sleep before 12 a.m., that's like 2 hours.
Got it. Got it. So what time are you going to sleep every night?
I'm going to sleep around 9:30.
And what does your Shabbat look like?
I'm asleep at 7:30.
PM.
I'm like out. But a lot of that has to do, someone just told me this was about the neshama yisera.
Yeah.
Like when you get the extra neshama, a lot is going on. And naturally, not just me, a lot of people go to sleep earlier on Friday night because of that. And then when it leaves Saturday night, naturally they feel like they have more energy. But do you
Wow.
have that experience where like you go to sleep earlier Friday night and then it's hard to go to sleep Saturday night?
Not
You
really.
don't have that. Okay.
I can tell you my mornings are radically different from yours, and you're up for
We're
like
only getting this podcast like we don't even cross over that many hours during the day.
I know it's like we're in two different time zones basically. Um, I you're up and doing things 5 hours before I typically wake up. A lot of that is I work not exclusively U.S. hours, but a lot of U.S. hours. Like usually I'm in front of my computer working from like 2 to 10:30, 11. So you're already fast asleep by the time I'm still finishing up some Zoom calls.
Right away.
Um, I happen to really love my sort of morning routine. I can walk you through everything I do before I start working. Um, First off, wake up in the morning, usually around 8 a.m. And I, of course, like say Modeh what like wash my hands, morning brachot. Then I'm in shul at 8:30. Typically, I'll go to I'll daven, I'll pray shacharit, the morning prayer. About 10-minute walk for me. I also love getting that natural sunlight in the morning. 10 minutes to walk to shul. Then, if it's Sunday through Friday, basically, I sort of alternate days. I'll either go to the gym by me and do like a full body workout, which I did today, or I'll do a run in Gan Sacher, which is like the park here in Jerusalem.
Hmm.
Beautiful park. like typically anywhere from call it like 4 to 8 miles, depending on like what I have coming up that day and everything. Come home, shower quickly, then usually we'll have some lunch with my wife, who's typically home, and then I'm out the door again by like 12:50. I go to mincha, which is the afternoon prayer at 1 o'clock. And then after that, I meet at around 1:15 when mincha's over. I'll meet my chavruta, which is my study partner, from about 1:15 to 2:30, and we learn together Gemara, typically, which is, I guess it's the Talmud, and it's basically, it's the written oral law talking about debates and disputes about the Mishnah, about the oral law. Very fascinating. It's the first time in my life I'm really enjoying that kind of study, which we could definitely talk about further. And then I sit down in front of my computer when that's done, 2:30, grind away till dinner time, maybe 7 o'clock, whatever it is, 7:30. Have dinner with my wife, grind away some more. Typically, we'll try to relax like about an hour before bed, so finish up about 11, unwind till 12, whether that's like watching a show with my wife or reading a book. And then usually like by 12 o'clock, I try to be, head on the pillow for that 8 hours, as they say.
Yeah, but that's a good 8 hours, right? And you feel
Exactly.
good after,
100%.
for
100%.
sure. Um, Thank you for the schedule. I'm curious, like how much you're on your phone, and
Oh, now we're getting vulnerable here.
show me the minutes.
Okay, I'll pull it up. You have to pull it up too, though, if we're doing this. Um, it is one of the goals that I actually was trying to work on at the beginning of this year. Oh, that's today, 50 minutes. Okay, but today's not so far. Show me last week. Swipe to last week.
Oh no.
2:18. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll
But
show you.
look, a lot of it's WhatsApp, and that's a lot of work, honestly.
Can you see? This is
Yeah,
2:49.
not bad, and that a lot of that is actually work usage. So,
The one thing that I'm curious about, and I need to find some way to track this on my computer. I mean, most of my screen time is on my computer, right, when I'm working, right? And it's sometimes hard. There's certain things like my vices with this, and it's something I've really worked on, are the things that could be used both professionally and personally. Like I still have a Facebook
mm,
account and like or YouTube. Like I barely use that for professional things at all. Maybe once in a while I'll watch a video that has to do with work, like a YouTube video that like will help me with something or a tutorial. But the real issue for me is I'll say LinkedIn and WhatsApp. Twitter isn't so bad. LinkedIn and WhatsApp are hard for me because I do so much work on LinkedIn and like bringing leads for
yep.
Beehive and other work there. WhatsApp, I'm like communicating with my wife and also like doing business stuff, speaking to people. That's how business is conducted here in Israel. That's the thing I've been struggling with. I'm actually just enrolled in a course that my friend is starting. His name's Randy. He has this whole thing. It's called, I believe, Kanso, Kanso Digital, and he's doing like a free cohort-based course. Trying to give people strategies to limit time on their phones and like the addictive nature of it. But I'm happy you brought that up because my hot take of this podcast is that almost everyone is completely addicted to their phones. It is a harmful addiction. And I think
Yep.
that in another 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to be thinking, this is absurd. How did we spend the equivalent of, I don't know, 10, 15 years of our lives, if not more, staring down at a screen?
So it's a great take. It's almost to the point, like if you are in a doctor's office or something, or you're waiting in line and you're not on your phone, people think you're weird. Like imagine sitting on
100%.
a chair and just smiling, and not even like think like you could be daydreaming, or you could just be like present.
Yeah.
Like my butt is on the chair, my feet are on the ground, my back is against the back of the chair. Like
Yeah.
that's even crazier. That's why we'll talk about presence at some point. But all the good and all the bad can be had with the phone. That's actually why I think. So the name of the accusing angel, the Satan, is the abbreviation for that is Samech Mem. The same
Mm,
thing as smartphone. like SM,
Interesting.
smartphone. Because
Wow.
like all the bad and all the good it can be had, right? You can
Wow.
go, you can call someone, you can cheer them up. You can go, coordinate a meal train for someone. You can make an intro.
Wow.
That's amazing, right? So the way I think about it, I think about like, am I in create mode or consume mode?
Yeah.
And I look back on my day and I'm like, whenever I'm creating, I'm happy. Like we're
Mm,
creating this conversation. I like talking to you. I'm learning new things. Like that's a form of creating. If I'm creating designs, I'm growing the business. The minute I'm scrolling, like I have that internal
I love it.
feeling of when
Yeah.
when you're dipping. And I think not everyone has built that presence. Do you feel like that too? Like I know some people they can only catch it after it's like, if you're eating too much, it's only when you feel sick. Or like
Yeah.
if you're scrolling too much, it's like 10 minutes you don't feel it. But if you get to 50 minutes or whatever, then you start to feel it.
Yeah. I definitely want to dive deeper on this in another episode because I think it's something so many people struggle with. I try to be very intentional. Like I have something like for instance on LinkedIn, like I mentioned, I post content on LinkedIn, which I think is definitely generates a lot of good and awareness. I mean, just last week,
Dude,
over
you're crushing it on LinkedIn. I don't think people realize it because I was looking at it and I was like, this is not easy to do. But I think you're being authentic. But
yeah,
you
yeah,
have a lot of activity on your posts and people want to hear what you're talking about.
yeah. So like last week, for instance, around a quarter of a million people like saw my post, which is if you talk about a reach that you can have, it's pretty incredible. But the challenge is, it's important to engage on LinkedIn as well to show up and not just post content. But I do that very intentionally where I have actually a blocker that blocks, it's called Newsfeed Eradicator. It's a Chrome extension.
Hmm.
It blocks all of my news feeds, and I have to go and manually unblock it and select the amount of time. And then I also have different lists that I've built out on social media of people that I know I want to interact with. I have like an Olim
Hmm.
list. I'll have to throw you on that list actually of like Olim Chadashim that are posting on LinkedIn that I want to go support. I have Beehive employees that like I know I work with, my coworkers I want to support. I have like the whole weirdos on LinkedIn, which is like the whole other, area that we could talk about in a future episode. And like I do that very intentionally. I also want to tell you because I like the thing you said about the accusing angel. I had, and maybe we should end with this, or we could talk more. I know we have so much to say, and it's always hard like talking about when to end
I'll
the
throw one
episode.
more thing in there to blow your mind. Do you know the Apple logo?
I was, I promise
Is
you,
this what you're gonna say, right?
I promise you, I was about to say this. Let me say
Okay,
it
so go
first,
ahead, go
and then
ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
curious what you're gonna say. I thought it was like my original Chiddush, but I guess not. The idea that I had, that I guess Jake had also, and probably a lot of people, but it is this idea of like a lot of the reason why I think we're here as Jews and as human beings. It's really before Jews were created or were a thing. In the Garden of Eden, you have this idea of Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Chava, and they, what was their big sin? What was the first sin of mankind according to the Bible? According to the Torah, is that they ate from the tree of knowledge. They ate from the chetzadas. And it's a big machlok at what that fruit was. In fact, most Jewish commentators do not think it was an apple, but anyone who you ask to draw a picture nowadays will almost assume that it's an apple tree. And you see all the famous paintings and pictures portraying it with an apple. And I was thinking, I was like looking at my phone, and I was like, you know what's crazy? This is one of the most valuable tech companies in the world. Not only that, their whole like chiddush of what Apple brought to the world, their whole newness was having access to the world's information in your pocket. It was
Yep.
having access to that tree of knowledge in your pocket. And if you look exactly what you're gonna say, if you want to pull up an iPhone, I could pull it up right now. Let me take my case off. You pull up the iPhone, you look at the logo. It's a little hard to see because my phone is white, but you will see it is an apple, not just an apple with a bite
Yep.
out of it. And I thought the symbolism there is crazy. Like we want to be fully knowledgeable. We want to know everything. Apple is a company that did this. Apple has that apple with the bite out of it. I don't know the exact message there, but to me that blew my mind. I'm curious, were you going to go somewhere else with it, or was that
Oh,
the
you
main point?
nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah.
So did you think of that yourself, or did you hear that from somewhere?
Someone else told me that.
Mm.
But it's crazy that I like intuition wise, I picked up on what you were gonna say before you.
Yeah,
But
crazy.
honestly, the fact that you came to it yourself is like a high level, you know?
Yeah, maybe I heard it from somewhere and I didn't remember, but I definitely want to talk more about this whole screen time thing further because I think a lot of people have issues with it. I was even thinking about experimenting with a kosher phone for a little bit and like back and forth. But definitely a rabbit hole I'd love to go down.
Healthy tech usage, something like that.
Exactly. Healthy tech usage. Because I think really what this podcast is part of the reason why I wanted to start this, I think you as well, is how do we balance being in the working world and being, what we think are very productive members of the business world and everything with being, both Israeli living here in Israel and being Jewish and being Orthodox observant Jews. And I think balancing technology sometimes are issues. I think one of the things, and this is a whole, like I said, a whole other conversation, but I know that whenever basically I need to or want to, I could completely put my phone down for 25 hours and my computer and everything else. And even for longer, I mean, it wasn't so long since I had the 3-day chags back in America where for 72 hours, I think I did math right. I usually don't do public math, but you know what I'm saying? For a large amount of hours, I don't have access to phone technology, anything, just because we're not supposed to as Orthodox observant Jews. So I know that at least is something that I could do if really need be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the amazing thing is figuring out how to engage and use the tech as
Yeah,
opposed to just like saying I can't use any tech, right? It's not the Jewish approach to
yeah,
say like obviously like spirituality is a big part of everything we do. Like I said, I wake up and I learn, but a big part of Judaism is about being part of the community as well and
yeah,
engaging in the working world, even though you're going to learn and carry out all of the laws, but to engage with it, right? And that
yeah,
goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, which was like track your hours, right? I can
yeah,
work in a good way, and I can just charge for what I'm doing,
yeah.
as
I
opposed to just
love
saying I'm
that.
not going to work. I'm going to go to a mountain, which
Yeah.
I'm the personality. Maybe I would do that. I don't know. My friend was just telling me about a silent retreat. They have them here in Israel. I might try it just to see what it's like for five,
Hey,
ten days.
that sounds interesting. I'll take the details there too. I actually
You want
did
to
a
come?
silent 3-day meditation retreat in the north of Israel about 4 years ago for
You
three
you
days
did a
only.
3 day meditation retreat?
Yeah, yeah, I did. It was amazing. It
Okay,
was
well maybe we do the tech episode and then we do the meditation. I don't know if it's all in one,
for sure. Yeah,
but
yeah, I definitely think we should. The last thing I'll say, and I think this is really where my difficulty comes from, is and it relates to Hitbodedut, which is a practice I'm sure you're very familiar with, which is basically a practice Rabbi Nachman talks a lot about. Other people talk about it, but Rabbi Nachman from Breslov really made it popular of like how important it is to not only pray the designated prayers, but to speak to God all the time, just like how you speak to a best friend. And he actually says for an hour a day, for a sha'ah. Sometimes it's hard for us to hit that. To me, with my Judaism, whenever I do Hitbodedut for a consistent period of time, I feel so good and so connected. The problem is that I these things right here, where are they? I don't know if they're here with me now. They're my AirPods. They're both my favorite things and my least favorite things in the world. Exactly. You know what's hilarious? It's like Hashem put us together for a reason. I
you
should
have
get my
that on your thing
AirPods.
too?
I had no, no. He has anyone who saw. You want to explain what you have on your AirPods?
It says Azamra Lelokai Biodi. I'm gonna pray to God with all of my energy or use all of my resources. Meaning like I have everything that I need right now and I'm gonna use that to make the world better.
You also have
You
to
really,
explain the Rebbe Nachman Torah, maybe a different podcast, but
yeah, yeah,
Azam
yeah.
Torah, that's Azamra. Um, I have on my AirPods. It just says, I think it says, I think it says I love you Hashem or thank you Hashem, one of the others. But when I saw the engraving option, I was like, who needs your name on AirPods?
This
So
is one of the best tech products.
it is one of the best tech products, but it is also one of the worst. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I have both of them. The issue with the AirPods, and it's difficult for me is because whenever I have a 10-minute walk here, 15-minute walk here, instead of just like thinking or contemplating or doing do, or I'm speaking to God, which I used to do all the time, I'm throwing these in, and yeah, I'm listening to a podcast or a shiur or just good music. But when I'm walking on Shabbat and I don't have AirPods and I have none of that, and I take a 20-minute walk by myself, I hear the birds chirping on a different like sensitivity, and I see
Yep.
the colors of the sky in a way that I don't see them during the week. I'm a different person when I don't have this technology holding me back during the week, like when I am on Shabbos. And like I think my difficulty and what I'm trying to figure out is like, how do I balance the two? Because when I leave that meeting or whatever and I check WhatsApp, I could use that time sending 10 voice notes, one to my wife, one to this person, one to that person, do a lot done there, or listen to a shiur, or I could just forget that that exists for a second, put it in my pocket, do some deep breathing, do some hitbodedut. I would love to hear if you struggle with that, what your thoughts on that are, and then after that answer, then we'll cut it off because we'll just keep going. We'll just
I
keep
know,
going. There's
I
too much
know.
to
We gotta
talk
cut it
about.
off soon. It's a longer answer, so maybe we'll talk about it on another time.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's a journey. So a lot of what you're picking up on is you're mindful about what's happening, and everything starts with that mindfulness and that presence. And
Mm,
then over time, as you try new things, you start to figure out how you want to engage in it. So for me, I really didn't have a meditation practice for many years, even though I was always drawn to it. The first meditation that I started with was Hisbodedus,
uh-huh.
and that's like, as you said, talking to God in your own voice, but specifically speaking out loud, because there's a difference
Mm,
between if you're meditating and you're just kind of thinking or not thinking or contemplating whatever it is versus verbalizing, because
mm,
whatever you speak, you create. And that really connects the mind and the heart and overcomes some of that challenge that what you brought up, the Eitzadat Tovara, that the tree of knowledge of good and evil made everything confused, right? I think a
uh-huh.
lot of people think that they are their thoughts, but you're actually like a piece of consciousness that's higher than thoughts. Not
Uh-huh.
everything that you think is from you.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole other conversation. Like we go through that another time. But yeah,
100%.
he's Dude really helped me kind of understand what my heart was saying. And then I was able to engage in the other meditation practices. And then over time, in putting my phone in between that and getting up early and having that core in the beginning, the benefits just kind of build, and there's a half-life I find of every meditation that you do until you reach different
Mm,
like plateaus of consciousness where um, you're kind of engaging in the world and also kind of viewing it in third person. I might
wow.
have really confused you, but basically in shorthand, the benefits keep compounding over time.
For
The longer
sure.
you do the meditation, the longer you do the hisbodedus. So just keep it up and keep being mindful.
100%. 100%. There's so much to dive in there, but I'll save the questions for the next time. This was awesome. I really enjoyed this. We covered a lot of ground, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Any parting words for our audience here?
Just keep meditating, keep talking to God. That's it. You
That's
have
it. Yeah.
everything in you that you already need.
I'm gonna wish you a Lila Tov and a good night because it's probably almost time for you to go to bed now.
Yeah,
Now
yeah. Text me like within
that
the next 6 hours if you want to reach me.
it's amazing.
All
Okay.
right,
Well,
Alex.
let's
See
see.
you.
So what's up? Have a good one.
Good talking to you.